Sharon Lewis and her band Texas Fire with What's Really Going On. This is Leid Stories. I'm Utrice Leid, and it's Free Your Mind Friday. What is Free Your Mind Friday? Some of you may ask, indicating that you haven't been with us for too long, but welcome, welcome, welcome. Free Your Mind Friday is when we dispense with our regular programming format, and the program becomes a free forum, a freewheeling, unscripted open forum, so that you could express your sentiments about an issue you believe is not only important to you, but might be important to other people too. And you're not just expressing a view. Let me be very clear. You are taking sides. You are either pro or against. You don't get to sneak between the lines. You've got to take a stand one way or the other and tell us why you are taking the stand that you're taking on the particular issue that you're highlighting. So you make your best case. Now, why do we do this? For one thing, it's great to have people have access and to express themselves. That's one thing. But really, as I've said time and again, it is about gathering new skills for yourself so that you know or you learn how to use the medium. You'll know how you were supposed to make your case. You don't run on and on and on. You have something to say, get to it. Let's hear a fact or two that illustrate your point, and make your point as strongly as you can. There is no right or wrong. There's only whether you made your case or not. And we will hear the reaction whether you made your case or not. This enables you to become more and more proficient at using media. Any particular media, any media at all, would require the same thing of you. You would become part of a program when people can appreciate that you're making the effort to make your point. It's not important whether people agree or disagree with you. It's important whether you make your case. And there is a discipline to it. There is a science to it. And as I say all the time, every one of us is an ambassador of this whole idea that we should be at home on any medium for any media forum in communicating what we're feeling and doing so with authority. And if you do just that, you'll be great as an asset to any group you belong to, or just representing your household, whatever it is. Get into the science of making your case. And so you become very valuable, that much more valuable to the community that you are part of. All right. So the number is 888-874-4888. Again, it's Free Your Mind Friday, and you are cordially invited to free your mind. I especially like it when you have a strong point of view that you can defend, and defend capably. That's very, very impressive to me. Okay. Harvey from Berkeley starts us off today. Hello, Harvey.
You?
Hello.
Hello, wonderful Utrice. How are you today?
Okay, thank you, Harvey. Wonderful, Harvey.
Good.
What's on your mind today?
Last week, Tony from Orlando, the last caller on your Free Your Mind Friday show, asked me about the fact that to deliver payloads like satellites into Earth orbit, the space rockets burn fossil fuels that pollute our atmosphere while the rockets punch holes in our Earth's protective ozone layer. And I did some research on Google and found out that it's not fossil fuels that NASA and other private rocket companies use. America's space program uses liquid hydrogen to propel their rockets. And when liquid hydrogen is burnt into our atmosphere, the rocket's exhaust turns into water vapor. The burnt hydrogen recombines with oxygen in the atmosphere to form the water molecule, H2O. Unfortunately, the extraction of hydrogen from methane can cause a significant amount of carbon emissions. And I, like Tony from Orlando, would like to see the world's space program do no harm to both our atmosphere or ozone layer. And I have a couple of short suggestions that might help to make a significant difference. The first area of research would be the gravity-defying properties of flywheels. For example, toy gyroscopes are powered by spinning flywheels. And if you have ever balanced a spinning toy gyroscope on your finger, it seems to exhibit anti-gravity effect in as far as it doesn't fall off your finger as long as the flywheel is rapidly spinning. And in an article titled "Two Men and a Gyroscope May Rewrite Newton's Law," in a December 1989 issue of Physical Review Letters, which is regarded by experts as one of the world's leading journals of physics, two Japanese scientists of the engineering department of Tokou University at Sendai, Japan, reported that small gyroscopes lost weight when spun counterclockwise in a vacuum at 13,000 revolutions per minute. They call this defiance of gravity a big effect. And it's really interesting that the majority of flying saucer reports describe them as round and spinning like flywheels. And my second idea is to have satellites or payloads that are lifted into our high atmosphere by helium-filled balloons or dirigibles, and then space tugs located in the upper atmosphere would attach a extremely strong line to the satellite and use their liquid hydrogen rockets to tug the satellite or payloads into Earth orbit and beyond. Space tugs can also be used to harvest dangerous space junk like malfunctioning satellites. It's a new space-age business, space salvage. So all I can say then is up, up, and away, and I want to thank you, Utrice, for letting me say it.
Well, thank you for contributing and giving a good example of what this program should be about and how you make your point, and you always do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. 888-874-4888. Do you have something that is of a particular significance to you and you would like to share it with other people? Then let's hear how you make your presentation at 888-874-4888. Again, it doesn't matter whether people think you're right or you're wrong. They'll take on that issue themselves. But it matters a great deal that you make your point and you illustrate why you believe what you believe. Okay? That's all we're asking. 888-874-4888. I was wondering if you had any reaction to our program just yesterday. As a matter of fact, we had a chance to talk to each other a little bit because one of our guests had an emergency. But I was wondering whether it was important to you that we know each other in a different way, a little bit more intimately, and whether it meant anything to you. So, so let's hear a little bit about that too. All right, I'm not seeing anything here. I'm looking for your name. It's not here. How come? 888-874-4888. Listen, I understand how people can feel a little bit nervous when a request is made that you become more focused in your presentation and that you give us some kind of, put some meat on the bone so we know where you reached out to get some additional information to shore up your points. This is very important. It sounds like, it's no big deal, but I understand how important it is. And so if you listen to radio or you watch television and you watch these shows where people get so-called feedback, you can see how different groups groom their members to essentially advance ideas on their own, or sometimes not on their own, but there's a discipline to it. And by the end of whatever statements that they make, you get a sense that they did some research to back up their views, and that makes them sound great. It makes them very valuable to the program because, as you can hear from our program, people do give some thought to what it is they want to mind, so that you don't just talk. Oh, what's going on? I'm hearing beeps. Uh, I'm hearing only beeps, but I'm not seeing anything. Is there a reason I'm hearing beeps but not seeing anything? Okay, you hear me. That's very good. Okay, but I'm hearing beeps, and I wonder if that indicates that somebody's trying to get in and is having some difficulty. Okay, 888-874-4888. Take a position on something, and let's hear how you make your case. And keep at it, getting better and better and better, so that even if you have only a few seconds available to you on a program or some medium in which you can share your ideas, it becomes a worthwhile effort. And you will be doing the work, if you will, of taking your ideas to uh, a much larger audience. Okay. Well, you're hearing me and I'm hearing you. I'm seeing you, but okay. Robert from Rio Vista, you're on the air.
I just want to say, first of all, my signal clear?
Yes, but
Okay.
I'm still
All right.
getting that muffled sound.
Oh, goodness gracious. On such an antiquated system, but I'll try to be clear,
No,
concise, and
but
complete.
it's fine. We could live with it.
Okay. Hail Harvey, hail David from Brooklyn. And Harvey's been on this West Coast, I guess, at least 15 years. And a lot of things that he suggests are coming to fruition now. And I think people need to pay attention to what's going on in the world a little more closely. And on the final out, I just love to say to all of my Black Lives Matter people out there that are still eating that slave diet, then I think they call it a hypocrisy. And that's all I have, Latrice. Thank you so much for being there. And
But wait,
I'll
before you
shut down.
go, why do you say
Uh-huh.
that?
Well,
All the people who are still eating a slave diet.
slave diet. So
Yeah.
if you think about it, what we had to consume during slavery was the leftovers, and it really wasn't conducive with what we was consuming in the motherland. We don't really take care of ourselves like we should. I'm family of seven, and five of them on blood pressure medicines, and They're still eating that slave diet. I've switched over to a Mediterranean diet, regular exercise, vitamin supplementation, and wow, I think the
I
last
just
time I was
wanted to
sick was.
question you that
Oh, go
that
ahead.
phrase might rub people, many people, the wrong way. A
I
slave
mean
diet.
to.
You may
Slave
be
diet. I mean
surprised
to.
to know that there are many slaves who ate very well. They grew their own food, they caught their own fish, and they did their own thing to provide for
You are
themselves.
you are
So
so
it's
right.
not to be assumed that when you say a slave diet, understand that you're also communicating at a different level, that you're referring to people of color.
Um, yes, I understand what you're saying there. My grandmother grew vegetables in the backyard. Um, she was a little different, but for a majority of my people, for those that may be shaken a little bit and take an examination of what they're really consuming, fast foods, um, overly cooked meats, animal fats, well, do a little something about it. There's a benefit out there to be had. And
Yeah,
to those that are
but
doing things the right
I'm
way,
suggesting that you
uh huh.
become more aware of that phrase because you might be
Okay.
uh, putting a lot of people off by suggesting that what they're eating, which is tradition in many
Uh huh.
families, many
Uh huh.
countries, people eat
Okay.
what they eat. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and when you say it that way, you're suggesting, or it comes across more, perhaps more boldly than you intended to, that
Mm-hmm.
you're referring specifically to Black people, people of color.
I'm okay with corrective criticism, and I do have a tendency sometimes to go to 10 when I'm making a suggestion. So those out there that are slowly making changes or that may offend, I definitely will apologize. I'm not above apologizing. I just would love my people to be a little more aware of what they are eating, how they're taking care of themselves. So I can tone it
Well,
down.
I'm glad you clarified that because it sounds more applicable and more universal in its application.
Well,
Thank you so much for that.
I
I
appreciate it. Thank
appreciate
you so
that.
much. Okay, bye bye.
David from Brooklyn, you're on the air.
Hello, David.
Is David there? We
That's on
having
my mind right now. Hello?
okay, you're on the air.
Okay. Hello?
Yes, you're on the air. We're hearing
Oh,
you.
good. All right. I have noticed that talking with many people, some of these people with extraordinary credentials, attendance at Ivy League schools and in some cases more than one doctoral degree and all kinds of well regarded academic credentials. I've been talking to these people. And some of them, even with all of their quote unquote education, they can't deal with the propaganda that the ruling class has presented coming from the pharmaceutical companies. I've had people that are just repeating the type of thing that you're going to hear about the necessity for getting only one type of answer or treatment for the corona-19 virus, and that is a vaccine. And what got to me yesterday was I was listening to a so-called public radio station, and the public radio station that is supposedly very progressive was giving a news report repeating the type of propaganda that comes from the corporations that run the pharmaceutical companies repeating a flawed experiment that anyone that listens to Gary would know is a flawed experiment, and they were repeating this on the station. So telling you that anyone who uses this, let's say, prophylactic treatment or early treatment for this COVID, that's somehow, a phony type of approach to disease. You have to deal with the vaccine. So what I'm saying in sum is that these people quite often who specialize in propaganda are very good even reaching the people who are supposed to be educated. And that's in quotation.
So let me ask you directly, what do you recommend? What is your position on it?
My position, my opinion of Davis from Brooklyn, is that everyone who is interested in their health and interested in protecting themselves from things like the COVID-19 ought to do his or her own research and look into it and not just swallow the stuff you get from corporate media, including the New York Times, which I can't believe that they're printing these type of articles in right now. And there was one article like that where they were talking about a hearing in the Senate, and this was buried in a page like page 13 or something in the New York Times, and they were lambasting senators who have alternative methods that were presented in Congress, and the head of the Democratic group was saying that they shouldn't be telling people about that. They just should stick with the status quo and what is being said by the pharmaceutical companies. So the point is that people have to do their own research. They have to seek out much more beyond what you see in corporate media, newspapers, television, and radio corporate, because the corporate media is not going to give you any kind of information that is in conflict with those who run the pharmaceutical companies and are going to make not billions of dollars, but trillions of dollars by only one thing, by going along with the experimental vaccine they are producing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well laid out and very strongly presented. I like that. 888-874-4888. It's Free Your Mind Friday. And we've heard quite a few people so far free their minds. What about you? 888-874-4888. E from Edgewater, you're on the air.
Good afternoon, Latrice.
Good afternoon, E. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there.
Good.
Starting to get funny just to say that, you know. Like it's like a nightmare come true, right? Anyway, what I was wondering was, since you were you ran a newspaper, am I correct in that? You were in charge of running a newspaper.
Yes.
And the New York Times ran a story for like 5 weeks about a police officer that was murdered by somebody who was considered a rioter or whatever they called them, insurgent. And they hit the man over the head with a fire extinguisher and killed him. And they ran this story for 5 weeks, and they knew it wasn't true. So I don't understand how they can get away with something like that.
Well, apparently not enough vigilance existed within the newsroom, because these are things that are supposed to be checked and double checked, and that they have their facts straight. So it is not supposed to happen for 5, and let alone for 5 weeks. That is beyond negligence. That's intentional. That's the only way I can see it.
Okay, so I agree with that 100%. So then also, wouldn't the Capitol Police know if one of their officers was murdered, and wouldn't they then tell the Times that you're running a wrong story? I'm sure they would have known it by the first or second day that one of their police officers is dead. So, I mean, they're in on it too then also. It tells me
Well,
that
don't forget that from that point of view, this is a recent story that they possibly are still checking on internally and haven't gotten conclusive evidence one way or the other, because now it's a legal case and it's literally out of their hands. This is a matter now for the lawyers and the courts to settle.
I see. Well, from the start, they said 5 people died. Now, 3 people died of natural causes. It was just their time that was up, and whether they were home mowing the lawn or whatever, they were going to die of natural causes. Maybe they were stressed out that day because they didn't realize what they were getting themselves into, and they had a heart attack. But 3 people died of natural causes. The police officer that they said was murdered, and that never happened, so that's not true. And then the girl,
but we don't know. We don't know.
Okay,
we don't
that's
know the fact of that.
Well, all we know is that the Times retracted the story finally, and they said that it wasn't true. So that's what I do know. What's going on in the courts, then, like you're saying, it's going further. But then what the point I'm trying to make, they say 5 people, 3 died of natural causes, 1 the police, and then the girl that was trying to get through the window was shot point blank by a police officer. So that's murder to me, and he's on paid leave. So it's all very they make you think one thing, and actually that didn't happen. And it's so pronounced.
You also are missing some points that are very relevant here. The 5 people who died, 3 of them, you say, of natural, quote unquote, natural causes. In the context of this big upheaval of people breaking the law and trying to overrun Congress and the congressional offices and the Capitol building and so forth, that becomes more than just somebody dying of natural causes. I mean, in a legal sense, it could be argued that the activities of the people contributed to their deaths. So I'm thinking that what they're doing is trying to sort it out. What exactly will the charge be, if there's to be a charge at all? I'm surprised that nobody has figured it out yet, but you have to understand the circumstances in which these deaths occurred, because it may turn out that these are not, your standard issue deaths, but it may turn out that these deaths were the cause of aggravated circumstances, in the sense that people were overrunning the Capitol at the time, and therefore, who bears responsibility for contributing to those deaths? This is a very complicated question. It's not an easy question to answer.
Well, there's another thing that bothered me about the whole thing was the so-called leaders of the rioters seemed to all not have any masks on their face, so they wanted to be identified. It seemed like some kind of a setup that was all arranged for the people that they already had stories for. They want them to be maskless. I mean, if you have an opportunity to wear a mask because there's a pandemic going on, and so you're legally wearing a covering over your face because you don't want to be identified, like most of the other people in the crowd were doing. But it seems that
Yes,
the
but
ones
you're missing
that
the
they were
point.
able to
The point is to
identify
go
all had
maskless.
masks on.
Yes, but to go maskless for those people who were not wearing masks was exactly the point they wanted to make. They are rebelling. They're not conforming to regulation or to the strong suggestion that that would even be of benefit to them to wear a mask. They're also indicating a, at least at the time, solidarity with Donald Trump and saying, we are with him on this question, even though he ended up wearing masks. But this is all symbolism, in a sense.
Mm.
They distinguish themselves by going against recommendations from this administration, from that administration, I should say. So we have some waiting to do to see how this eventually will turn out. Will official charges be lodged, and against whom and why? And can they prove that any one person's actions led to somebody's death? That's what we have to wait for.
Right. Last week I mentioned Jesse Smollett, and you corrected me. I thought he was in a commercial for State Farm, and it's another actor. And when I looked at the both of them, they don't really look that much closely similar, but not that close. But the point was, the case finally wrapped up on January 28th. He got 2 days of public service, and he had to give up his $10,000 bond so he wouldn't have been in jail while the trial was going on. So that was the end of the verdict. That was it for Jesse's now finished with that. So
I don't know what to say about Jesse Smollett, except I didn't find him to be particularly relevant to Black people's struggles. But, this is life. This is how it works sometimes. Thank you, E, for calling in today. Gino from the Bronx, you're on the air.
Good day, Utrice.
Good day.
Did you hear the good news?
What is the good news?
Utrice, we all woke up today. I say this at work to people sometimes, periodically. Did you hear the good news? What happened? What happened? I said, we all woke up today. I said, why is it that we ain't as excited as when they kick a football and everybody's up and cheering? Just to wake up, we should have that. Anyway, that's part of the point, not beside the point. David was talking about the alternative therapies, and I believe it was Eve last week talked about Dr. Bregan. It's really worth listening to with Dr. Zelenko and the 3 other doctors he's had on recently. It's, doctors speaking and doctors doing things without experimental things and getting results. And relating to that is the actor Lou Gossett Jr., who had the virus recently and couldn't walk, and he took one of these alternative substances. I think there's about 4 or 5. And he was up and about the same day. So this is how we just, sometimes I think lately more and more Swiss cheese. We got connections and then there's spaces. And so if we, with your show and others like it, we help to fill in those spaces, with some wisdom. I think we'd be better off as we go along down the road and not given to despair for either what's here or what's coming. So, Utrice, I don't call often as some of the callers. And the last time we talked, you had mentioned like sometimes could be worthwhile to pursue one's philosophy of something more intimate or something very personal. And how do you feel about that? You even indicated that today. If I could have a few moments, I would share what I've discovered by personal experience since, well, I would say especially 18 till I just hit 65 in my body. What I discovered helps to fill in a lot of the Swiss cheese, I would say, approach to life that we've been given in pieces of the truth here and there, and then the lies, and we got to find our way out of that darkness to the light. So if I can get a few minutes, I'll share something very personal, that because all your callers I've listened to over the years, and I feel like they're part of my neighborhood. When I'm very active with people in my neighborhood. I mean, I say hello, I listen to them, I'll hug them, I'll kiss some of them. And those who pass away, I got them on my prayer list. Those who are here, I got them on my prayer list. But I try and share solid information in terms of the health that we hear on the show, or ideas of dealing with the stress besides medications, with the meditation or something of the sort, stress reduction, the music, the arts, going to a museum, encouraging young people to go to 86th Street and just look at a picture like I did the first time when I was 27 years old. And I was like on a flying carpet. I felt like I smoked something, which I hadn't done in about 10 years at that point. So if I can have a few moments to try and tie some of this together on a personal level, I think it may say something to all the people out there, and including yourself, because like last time I said, I don't know.
You had your moments already. you blew your moments.
Well, I didn't get.
You now want to have by just you were skirting around the edges and whatnot, right. And now you want to come to the real thing, but you've blown a lot of your time.
Well, just figure, I don't call that often. That's why I'm asking for a little more space than folks who sometimes call twice a week, once a week.
But what did I say as we started the program today? You develop a discipline.
Yeah.
So that you don't waste your time, you don't waste our time. But that you understand the economy of time, and you respond by making the best use of the least time that you have. But okay, let's go with what you want to talk about today. But please understand that there are lots of people calling in, and it is not fair to say, well, I haven't called in a long time. Whether you called in a long time or didn't call in a long time, the rules are the same. You have a finite
I wasn't understanding that rule of yours, but I hear you. I just figured, I might not call for a long, long time again, because what I have to say.
That's on you.
Well, it's on me in terms of I don't want to, like you were just saying, I don't want to take away from people who don't call, who are new callers, and I'm very responsible about that. That's why I don't call that often, because I love when a new caller calls, and so I give the space for that. So I understand what you're saying about time. That's one of the reasons I don't call so much, because I love to hear the new callers. I know what the old callers are saying, and they all have something to say. Sometimes it's reiterated and reiterated and reiterated, but that don't make it less true. I think, like the ABCs, we need to hear it.
Let's cut to the chase here. You will have some time today, not a lot, because we do have people who are waiting to get on air.
Here we go. I'm going to try it and encapsulate it very quickly. Oftentimes, we get in all the itineraries of what's wrong with the world. Like, by the way, Eve, when he cried once, that touched me. I felt the tears in his talking a few months ago. We often talk in the news. Somebody was surprised about they can't tell the truth. Well, they've been lying since the Vietnam War. So my thing is, it's often put the attention on the destruction and the ignorance that goes behind it, and the fear underneath it all, why people act the way they do, and most of them in power. What I discovered since I'm 18, wondering after my mom passed if there's something there, I gave up smoking with a good friend of mine, musician, inspired me about living life better. I changed my diet for Lent, but I kept going on all these years later without putting a piece of meat in me. I learned to meditate. Took me 3 months to learn. Well, after 3 years, my friend moved away. The support group of 2 in a neighborhood where people were either destroying themselves with drugs or beating up other people because of the color of their skin. Both was chaotic, and we were affirming life. Well, he went upstate with his girlfriend. I was feeling down after about almost a year, and I got invited up there. So I went up there, and I felt they wanted to share the intimacy. So I went out to a backwoods area with a book of poetry. I did my meditation in front of this junior high school-sized football, baseball field surrounded by trees. I read the poetry out loud to get my vocal cords strong for when I did speak with somebody. At least once a day I'll speak with somebody. Could go an hour and a half. You might be able to tell. And as I'm sitting there reading, I see a butterfly come by. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I go back to reading, getting the insights of the musicality of the poets. I look up and I see it flutter by. I say, it's really beautiful. I go back to reading. Third time, coming up to the end, I look up, it flew by in front of me on this rectangular field. It went all the way down to the intersection. It went across that way. I see, Jay, it's following the pattern of the cut grass, because you got the cut grass and the wild grass, and the line in between demarcation was where I saw it flying on. Went all the way opposite me, went a bit to the center, back to the fourth line, and it hit the intersection. It landed on the shrubs. I measured about 25 years ago. I went back to this place. It's 168 feet, if those can picture it. It's on the bushes to my left, 168 feet away, and I got this thought, you trees. Wouldn't it be beautiful if that butterfly could fly on my finger? And another thought said, don't be silly. You can't do that. That only happens in fairy tales. Something said whistle. I put out my right hand. My left hand had the book of poetry. I whistled. High-pitched whistle. You trees, the butterfly came, a monarch, I didn't even know what you call it then, I was 18, come flying 168 feet towards me, it lands on my finger. And I had experience where my conscious, subconscious were aligned with my superconscious. The Lord our God is one. I felt the presence of such peace, not excitement, not emotionality, just a deep knowingness that this is the way things should be, that we should have this connection with everything that's alive. And I asked God a question to end off. Is it true? Was Jesus used to raise people from the dead physically or mentally? What about Elijah? What about this guy Edgar Casey diagnosing people from a distance? Is that true? What about Yogananda, with the miracles in his autobiography? And I heard you, Trace, it's true. And I heard it say, I know you're lonely, but you're not alone. And that, for me, broke the ego of conditioned mindset that I had with my limited education, with a pretty ignorant neighborhood. It broke that mindset to encourage me to say, keep on walking up that mountain, do those practices, apply what's in the good books of all the world literature, and eat right, meditate, do your good deeds. That's as simple as it is. And anybody will have experiences like that, and even further. So that's what I find keeps me going. That's what I find will keep any of us going, no matter what comes. So I hope it says something to everybody out there, because I really feel like I love you all. And I'm just trying to give a loving reminder for the way out of the mess that we're in and what's coming. And so that's my gift to all of you, including you, Trees.
All right.
Thank you for that space.
I accept graciously the gift that you're giving. Thank you so much for calling in and contributing today.
You're welcome.
Jerry from New York, you're on the air.
Hey, Trees, how are you?
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay. I'm calling about the relief packet, but I just wanted to say what Eve was commenting about this stuff that was portrayed at the riots. The problem is these journalists are allowed to lie and lie and lie without giving their proof. So what happens is if you lie so much, then everyone, you know how it happens, everyone just keeps repeating the lie, but nobody actually checks anything. 2 out of those people out of the 5 definitely weren't even near the Capitol. Like, one died of a heart attack, one died of a stroke. They weren't involved in anything. They literally just died. So it's just the lies feed into the narrative. And it's very sad, because when I was younger growing up, journalism was great. They ran after the story. They proved the facts. So it's become very sad with what's going on with journalism. But in terms of a relief packet, I find it disturbing, almost criminal, the amount of money that I think they're saying 9% of it is going to COVID relief, and all these other millions and billions of dollars are going to basically, you heard about the bridge in New York for Schumer, to go from Buffalo, New York to Canada, the underground rail service in Silicon Valley. Why are all of us having to pay for this? A true relief, COVID relief package should literally, the same people that really need the money, which is really sad, are still not being helped by it. And I find it criminal. I just don't understand.
But first of all, I appreciate your alarm, but how have you authenticated it?
I listen to major different outlets of programming, and I research stuff online, reading articles. They have all this information put out as to actually where the money is actually going. They have it broken down.
No, I'm not talking about the money. I'm talking about when you say people are dying, but there's no proof that the insurrection caused their deaths.
Oh, because they were with their family members. They interviewed their family members. They were just walking on the street. One person had a heart attack. The other one was with their family members. The guy had a stroke. They weren't even near the rioting. They were just almost like, they weren't even near the Capitol. They were just, people who died with I guess they were marching or whatever. They had nothing to do with it at all. That's from their family members. That's from other people.
No, you know what some reports are saying, but we haven't seen a definitive report yet. I'm not so sure that I could call what we've seen a definitive report.
Well, the police officer, they're actually refusing to release his autopsy results until they wanted it to pass. So people believed that they were saying he wasn't even struck by a fire extinguisher. This was a story they put out. I believe he also had a stroke. I don't remember now because it came out very early afterwards, but nobody took on that story.
But who came out with that information? Which
three different
source?
I don't remember now.
Reported.
It came out a couple of weeks ago. And I don't even know if his family came out about something. That it wasn't even, he actually, I believe, had a stroke. And they would not release his record.
But who's saying that? Who is saying that?
I believe somebody in the government finally.
This is how. Just a minute. Who is saying that and authenticating the cause of death?
Well, I think they finally came out and released the medical examiner report because people were demanding it.
Well, I haven't read that. Yeah. I have no knowledge that the medical examiner has released a report.
It's really, really quite sad that, this is something where the medical examiner report comes out. It should be released immediately. You shouldn't have to ask for it since you're saying how somebody was killed. It's just very, very sad. But I'm really calling.
Well, if you know how medical examiner reports work, I'll tell you. If you don't know, it takes time.
I know they can take weeks for certain elements of it with if there was drugs in the system or. That I understand. But there are certain, when you cut someone's brain open, you can see where there's been a bleed, and they can determine and take a much educated guess right away with certain things.
That's not the way good medical examiners work.
Yes, they can make a preliminary report. They do that all the time. They'll make a preliminary report, and then they'll wait out for the other things to come in.
This is not the stuff that is given to preliminary reports. You either have a full report or you don't.
Well, that's not always what happens.
When we do a piecemeal autopsy, and first we'll go after the brain and see what we find there, and then we check out the lungs and see what we find there.
Yeah, they'll do. Well, it doesn't take long to do the physical
part. It's a disciplined process, and it takes time because you have to run tests, and you have to run different kinds of tests, which take different amounts of time to come back with an answer.
Right. That's why they do preliminary, and then they follow it up with the other stuff. But I'm really here.
I'm trying to communicate with you that a situation like this probably never will qualify for preliminary reports. You don't do preliminary reports under circumstances like this.
Okay.
Because very often what you're looking for is you get the final report from the medical examiner, and then possibly there are other people who are also conducting simultaneous findings to see whether the findings coincide with each other or whether there are great differences in their findings. You can't say just from the outside, well, this is the way it ought to work.
I'm not saying
You
that, but
have
I'd
to
like to
know
free
how
my
it
mind
works.
about. Are you going to let me free my mind about the COVID relief? Because that's what I'm really calling to talk about.
Yeah, but first, let's get this one thing clear.
I
This
don't
is what I
need to
mean
rehash this. I
when I
don't need to
say,
do that. I don't want my
pardon
conversation to
me
be
for
taken over.
interrupting while you're
You
speaking.
should. You should pardon me because you are taking over my
Goodbye,
whole conversation.
goodbye. To be ignorant is one thing, but then to be arrogant about your ignorance is a whole other thing, and I don't put up with that. Not at all. I'm trying to suggest to you that you do not know what you think you know, and you ought to just wait and see what is put out there as the final result. But you're talking to me about preliminary reports. If somebody in your family had experienced a tragedy like that, and in which uh, an autopsy had to be done, you're not going to be satisfied with a preliminary report. And no doctor worth his or her salt would do a preliminary report in circumstances that contentious. They're not going to do that. So I understand you may be a very intelligent person and you may know all things, but I still do know a few more things than you do. And just before you run your mouth, just listen. It wouldn't hurt. Chances are you may learn a thing or two. You never know. Well, it looks like we've come to the end of our program today. And I want to congratulate you all for doing such a splendid job, as usual, in making yourselves very clear. And this is the discipline I was talking about. You have to have a discipline in the development of your ideas and in the presentation of your ideas so that when you talk to people, you come across credibly. It doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong. It is important only that you invest in the development of your ideas. And whatever positions you take, you would be, of course, looked at to defend your position. But there's nothing wrong with just making sure that you have a credible defense of your position. It it helps us as a community when every member uh, exercises the same principles in a way. By the same, I mean that they don't just yammer, that they have some facts, they research, they do things that will help shore up their position, and then they go from there. But it's very important. It's very important to make that investment because it's a discipline. And a lot of people, as you could turn on the television and see it every day. People are talking, but they have no idea what they're talking about. And they're not listening sometimes. That compounds the problem. I want to thank you so much for, of course, doing everything you usually do to make this program worth listening to and to bring information to others and share information and to help us build community. This is good work, and I thank you and congratulate you for it. So, this is the weekend. What happens? What happens is you should take some time for yourself and relax. You should decelerate, find some way to decompress. Surround yourselves with people who bring good things into your life, and hopefully you do the same for them and make it through. And we'll see each other on Monday, God willing, and the creek don't rise. Thanks so much. for today. Bye-bye.